Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, Rick Zedník.
Dobrý den, I'm Rick Zedník, Senior Advisor and Secretary of the Board of Women Political Leaders, the Global Network of Women Politicians. Welcome to Women, Peace and Geopolitics, Leadership and Leverage. We're very fortunate to open this session with a presentation of a GLOBSEC report. I'd like to bring on stage Sigita Struberga, Secretary General of the Latvian Transatlantic Organization, and Vladislava Gubalova, Senior Fellow at GLOBSEC, to make the presentation.
Thank you, Rick. Hello, everyone. Sigita, with a group of women, we put together a report that is looking at the evolving role of women in defense and in resilience in 4 countries that are directly located on the eastern flank. We're talking here about Romania, Latvia, Poland, and Slovakia. Why the urgency? Why should we all care?
Thank you very much for this important question. So the answer is easy, actually, I must say that it's not only about values-based answer, about inclusion, but it is also about very practical reasoning. And to have a total defense or so-called whole-of-society approach, we just have to have women on the board on equal positions.
That's right. And if we have the presentation, I can click to the next slide. Which is about some numbers. So we looked at the women's participation in armed forces, in police forces. We also tried to peek into what is the situation when it comes to cybersecurity, military education, and other sectors. And these are some of the numbers we found out for the 4 countries, our case studies. You can see that all of the 4 countries are actually exceeding the average for NATO when it comes to participation of women in armed forces. Specifically here to highlight Latvia with 18% and as well as Poland with 16.5%. But you can see also that in police forces, if we're just talking about participation and representation here, we see also bigger numbers of women participating, and especially, again, Latvia actually is holding the record for the European Union with 47% of women, almost a parity. However, we know that this comes with a warning that behind that number there is a shortcoming as well, and maybe Sigita will mention that in a bit. Maybe some other important and interesting information. Did you know that in 2028, Latvia actually will bring about women into their national defense service, which is actually compulsory military service. And women constitute about 20% in the Polish cyber defense structure, 32% in the border security. maybe even more interesting in Romania, that 41% of the students in the national military schools are women, and 36% of those that are working in the National Cybersecurity Directorate. Probably you're spotting behind me also some single-digit numbers, and you can see that while in Slovakia the legislature is up to par, there is a struggle in engaging women in the new tech units. So we did see some bright spots in our analysis and in our study, but there's a lot more to do. So Sigita, what is the holdup?
Yeah, indeed, there are very promising developments, but at the same time, we are facing a lot of challenges. And by the way, the numbers of police are demonstrating one of those challenges, because basically it is about low-paid jobs and payment gaps. One of the least paid environments in Latvia is exactly police. So there is the answer. The same goes, by the way, to the science. Just to give you a glimpse. But also, in order to analyze both the developments and gaps, we did not only statistical analysis, which you see on the screen, but also we did interviews with women involved in security sectors, different dimensions of them. And in order to analyze, we looked on several dimensions, and first, of course, is military. And here, what we see is that despite of promising policies and well-established responses to the challenges we have, we still have several challenges or gaps. Gaps in infrastructure, gaps in recruitment, training that are not tailored for women needs, or the strategies of communication actually are not built to be inclusive towards women. When it comes to civilian sphere or environment, as I already mentioned, the issues with payment gap persist, and also what we faced is lack of data. So how do you want to make evidence-based analysis or policies if you lack data, for example, on how many women are involved in defense industry, which we didn't find data for all countries we analyzed. But then, of course, there are other challenges, but I would say that the challenges which unite all these sectors are about unequal treatment in meetings, still in 21st century. Then other, like, for example, lack of supportive mechanisms like mentorship. Then important dimension is lack of support in society or societal resistance, what means that we really need to educate society. And there are many more, but the final one which I really want to underline is invisible works women continue to do. And as our president, Chancellery's head, she said that women can take whatever role she wants, but there are so many buts. The first is she must work harder, there are higher standards, and there are those invisible works she has to do when she returns to home, and many other buts which she is still facing. So yeah, and many more you can read in our report, I guess.
Yes, indeed, challenges abound, but we also need to look for opportunities. And when we look at our case studies, we see that actually women graduates in STEM are in good numbers, especially in Poland, 42%, in Romania, 43%. So my question is, can this intersection between technology and defense, and we're spending a lot of time talking in depth here at the forum, could that be a pivotal opening? Could it be an opportunity? And what are some of the other very essential must-dos that we saw and recommend in our report?
Absolutely. Those security-related environments or those environments which are related to dual use, they are the gateways for more women inclusion. But at the same time, I really want to underline that the umbrella understanding should be that there can be no comprehensive defense or whole-of-society approach without equal inclusion of women into any of the process. And also, there were several recommendations, as you mentioned, and I will just underline a couple of them. The first one, which I find particularly important, is language, the vocabulary we use. And this enables us not only properly address the urgent issues, but also to mainstream gender-related topics and to raise women awareness themselves. And then, second is decisions and policies should be made on the research, including the one which is related to invisible labor. And the third is that investments are needed in infrastructure, effective and not only formal institutions, new public-private cooperation frameworks, and of course, civil society engagement. And I will stop here.
We have, of course, left out some of our recommendations. Please check it out in our report, in print or in online. And as we are firm believers that complex challenges are solved only if we put the gender dimension in it as an essential element, we believe that the participants in the next panel are also firm believers and looking forward to hear their remarks as the conversation continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sigita and Vladislava. And I really do recommend everybody, please do look for a copy of the report here while you're in the building, or if you're remote, you can find it online and share it widely. So to discuss these matters, I'm pleased to invite a distinguished panel to join me on stage. So if I can ask Comfort Errol, please, the President and CEO of the International Crisis Group. Iryna, round of applause, sure, thank you. Iryna Nykorak, member of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine and also head of Arm Women Now. Irene Fellin, the NATO Secretary General Special Representative for Women, Peace and Security. Welcome. And Heather Conley, Senior Advisor for Evenflow Macro and Non-Resident Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. So before we dive into discussion, also, we will be opening the floor for questions from the audience. If you're here in the room, we do have microphones, so I'll ask you to put your hand up and we can make sure you get one of those. If you'd like to ask a question online, we do have Slido, and we'll be looking for that. I think the hashtag is GLOBSEC Forum SCH for this particular stage that we're working on. So what I'd like to do is to think about this subject in the serious context that we're living in today, not least of all. Whether to wage war or to pursue peace are decisions with the most severe consequences. Massive financial costs, of course, but also implications for geopolitical relations, shifting territory, access to natural resources, and life and death. With such high stakes, women must play a role in decision-making. And this is what I would like us to focus on. The title for this session is Leadership and Leverage. Let's talk about leadership. And so, Comfort, I'm going to turn to you first and say, does a world where there would be representative leadership by men and women, would that be a safer world?
Well, first, thanks for the really compelling report, and it was good to get a quick summary of it. My answer is no. There is no magic bullet. I think if you don't come with the right mindset, with a sense of core principles and values, if you don't listen, if you don't have the right analytical tool, if you don't have a competent team around you that has an understanding of what is at stake, then those facts don't change as well. Of course, the mindset, attitude, behavior, experience of whoever is at the center of gravity in shaping, whether it's a mediator, a head of state, those facts are facts, and you can see fault lines whether you're a man or woman. So I don't think I mean, I don't think it matters. It's about the values that you harbour.
So we're okay with status quo?
I'm not saying we're okay with the status quo.
I want to
I'm
make sure
saying
there's no
that
misunderstanding.
in the end, what matters for the work that I do, which is about preventing, de-escalating, is that we're looking for people who have a very clear analytical understanding, have the policy chops, have the competence. I don't want to be in a room where somebody is judging me by the fact I'm a woman or a man. And by the way, I have a broader understanding of the identities that should be at the table as well. Okay. So if you don't have all the right qualities, it doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you. This is provocative, and I like that. I'm going to turn next to Iryna. So, Iryna, you are living in a country where war is raging on its territory. You've been very active as a voice and as a leader in making sure that women are being heard and being maximized in terms of their potential to contribute to a secure Ukraine. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, please?
Thank you so much for invitation and for such great opportunity to share my thoughts and Ukrainian experience from this stage. So today we speak about women, peace and geopolitics. At a time when Ukraine is in the very epicenter of a battle for our freedom, for independence and for common values. And in this battle, women are not bystanders. They are at the front lines, literally. And I want the world to know how Ukrainian women right now are facing the greatest challenges of our time and the greatest injustice in 21st century. Right now, women in Ukraine's defense are not an exception. It's our new reality. Today, more than 70,000 women are serving only in armed forces of Ukraine. In total, in defense and security sector, the number is 130,000 women. And at the battlefield, we have right now, just think about it, number 25,000 women. It's women who hold combat position. In comparison, in 2024, this number was only 5,000 women. So we see this very fast and strong increasing in 5 times.
Why does this matter?
Why this matter? I want to make the voice of Ukrainian women more loud at international level, more visible, because it's about recognition. It's about respect to their dignity. And I think that Ukrainian women who join the army on volunteer basis after full-scale invasion sacrifice a lot. And today, if you allow me, I would like to share with you a few stories because my conversation with all these women across the front line and often under the fire changed the way I understand women's leadership in defense. And war counts lives in numbers. But when we Ukrainians are asked what war means, we answer it means names. And the number of war crimes is growing so fast that it's simply impossible to share all stories, but I would like to tell you a few. Olga Bigar, before full-scale invasion, she was a lawyer and has her own business. She is originally from Donbass. Now she is a captain, deputy commander of the artillery battalion. She says, "The army is my home and I feel at home here. This is the environment in which I can best serve my country." Over the past year, Olga has seen her 8-year-old son only twice, for a few days. Olena Kuznetsova. Until February 2022, she was a primary school teacher in Irpin. She escaped the occupation. Now she is serving in Azov Brigade. She says, "Life is only one and the joy we have now is very small. To hug a comrade who came out of battle, to be with our relatives who are waiting for us at home under fire." Or Oksana Rubanyak. She joined the armed forces on volunteer basis after full-scale invasion at the age of 18. Now she is a commander of a special unit of strike drones. After being seriously wounded and losing her beloved, she continued to fight. She says, "I don't romanticize war. It's ruthless and changes you forever. And I really want this fight to end in my generation." Few more stories, if you allow me, please. Valeria Subotina, defender of Azovstal, mayor of National Guard, journalist, and poet who was held captive by Russia. 5th of May 2022, she got married in Azovstal, and on 7th of May, her husband Andrei was killed. After her capture, she returned to her native Azov brigade, and she says, "I understood that I would probably die, that it would not end well for me, but I did my job until the end, and now I continue to work." And the last one, Iryna Tsibuch, Ukrainian journalist and activist who defended the policy of remembrance, volunteer combat medic, and my friend. She was killed during evacuation a year ago, a few days before her 26th birthday. Iryna said, "I'm as young as any girl in France or Spain. The only difference is that we have a totalitarian regime on our border that attacked the country I love so much. I like to travel, but I want to live here. That is why I'm defending my country and why I'm ready to die for freedom in my country." So I think after these stories, my answer will be very obvious. That's why it matters.
Thank you for the powerful, and please, I would like us all to salute these women.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene Fellin. So after such powerful testimonials, from a multilateral perspective, working specifically on women, peace and security, what gives you hope? Where are we going? What's next?
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Irina. It's difficult to speak after you, especially because for us sitting in offices, it's very different. So for me, the leadership that gives me hope is the leadership of the women who are fighting on the front line, which is the battlefield, but the front line in many different ways. The hope is that we know that we need to continue fighting for this at different levels, so not only on the battlefield. We know that right now, as already in the past, I mean, that's nothing new, but we are on a down when it comes to women's rights, including women, peace and security. So what we have collectively is the multilateral at NATO, at the EU, but it's also the multi-stakeholder approach, so where I see the different stakeholders coming together, the private and the public sector, think tank, an organization often led by women, and institution to maintain the commitment we have with this agenda. And especially because this represents our common values of democracy, freedom, and human rights. Where it doesn't give me enough hope is the fact that after 25 years working on women, peace and security as part of the frame of the UN agenda, but it's not in the year 2000 that the commitment of women started. I mean, this agenda came as a result of decades of fight by women across the world. Women who survived wars in the Balkans, in Rwanda, in many, I will not now start mentioning all because I will certainly forget many. That's the way how it was formalized. But the problem right now is that we still see this as a silos. And when we focus on conflicts, when we focus on wars, when we focus on geopolitics, there is no space for this conversation. This is still considered something that we can put on a hold in the best case scenario.
So you're saying it's considered as a nice to have or the need to have?
It's considered a NATO hub when we have time to do. We thought we were on peace. If you look at NATO Strategic Council in 2010, we defined Europe on peace. And then now in 2022, we define that we are no longer living in peace. So we do this. And when I say do, we don't refer to NATO, I refer to the global community. But at the moment where our energy is taken somewhere else. I'm not saying that we don't consider this important, but we cannot be multitasker as we pretend to be, maybe.
Okay. Heather, Iryna says we're regressing, if I can use one word to take out of what you were saying. Does that mean that we're becoming less safe?
No, I think it means we need to tackle the problem a little differently. And leadership happens wherever we are. And I would argue that we have extraordinary women leaders at all levels, at our community level. They are driving community solutions. Ukraine is a wonderful example of, I think, one of the most powerful civil societies that I've ever seen, led by women that are fighting for an exciting future for Ukraine. I think we have to get a little, get out of our silos, get out of our conference rooms a little bit, get out of our recommendations a little bit and say, how do we work down at the community level and help lift those women leaders that are fighting for food security, water security, fighting corruption? How do we lift them up and meet them in the middle with the wonderful work that is happening at multilateral organizations and think tanks? Because our modern problems, no one leader has the solution. And this is, I think, Comfort, what you were alluding to. In a multipolar world with a multidisciplinary approach, we need our best community leaders, our economists, our technology leaders. We need our national security leaders to come together. And their voices do have to be heard. So I would rather us think about ways that we can, in our own communities, find those women leaders, lift them up, and have them participate in the challenges that we're all facing. Because what I find in the United States, there's an amazing disconnect between the local and the national level. And I like to say, every person is responsible for their security, their cyber hygiene. Everyone has to prepare for a natural event, a disaster. They are leading in their families, they're leading in their communities. How do we get them to tether to what we're working on the national level? That's what I'd like to see. That's what gives me hope to reconnect, because we are all leaders wherever we are. Now, sometimes we shy away from that leadership because it's very hard and you need a lot of courage. But when you do that and say, I am working on something powerful and I can connect to another citizen who's working on something powerful, that's when magic is made. So we don't have to wait for our leaders to be appointed. Let's do it at the community level right now.
Great. Comfort, I can tell you want to get in on that.
Yeah, can I just to pick up on your point, this is the most threatening moment, whether you're a man, woman, or a person who holds several identities. Because one of the big lessons I've learned in the last few years, if you exclude in the name of exclusion, then you're going to get another group of aggrieved societies. And that is the most fundamental mistake you can make to anybody who feels marginalized already. I don't want you to exclude just to include me. Mm-hmm. I want to ensure that the process carries everybody together. Otherwise, we get to the situation where we are now. And this is truly the most dangerous moment for anybody who has multiple identities and has had to fight for many years to be included. And suddenly, you're struggling again to make the case for having certain people at the table. So I really want to agree with what you said, that we really need to make sure that everybody's been educated to understand that, to include doesn't mean you exclude anybody from the process.
In the report, by the way, we are open on Slido. If you have questions, feel free to submit them there, and I'll also look for hands in the audience in a moment. In the report, on page 27 precisely, there's a quote that I really liked from Verkhovna. It says, in times like the ones we're in, there is less room for discrimination because we simply cannot afford to be picky. which is, I would say, Ukraine is providing these lessons. They're saying, we can't choose who's going to contribute or how they're going to contribute. We need anybody willing to contribute, able to contribute. Is that a fair way of thinking of it, Iryna?
I would say yes, and I hear all these results of reports, and I would like to say that one day I will see Ukraine in this research because we already learned a lot from this war, from full-scale invasion. And I'm ready to provide all information, all numbers, all statistics, just to involve Ukraine in all these processes. And we really can share our policy, our vision, collaboration with all European partners.
Okay, great. Are there, I can open already if there's questions here in the room. Don't be shy, I'll come back. Okay. Oh, there's one already, excellent. Can we...
Hi, my name is Eleonora Tafur. I'm a think tanker based in Milan, Italy. I have a question for Iryna. First of all, thank you so much for bringing us the testimonies of women fighting. I want to ask about the inclusion of women in another very important setting, that is the reconstruction of Ukraine. How do you think the gender perspective is informing the process, and what do you think the Ukrainian government, but also the international community, could do better to include really everybody in this important endeavor? Thank you.
I see two other hands. If there are also questions for Iryna on this topic, I encourage you to ask them right now because we can group them. Is there one over there on this? Okay.
Hello, my name is Major General Retired Dusty Schultz, and so I've been the only woman in a room many times. That being said, I would also like to hear your perspective on champions for women. And what I would also say is, we see in this room that it's mostly women, not only, but for me, I have had many men that have made sure that I have had a seat at the table because I was the right person to be in the room, and I would like to hear about that as well.
Great. In a moment, I'll ask Iryna, but also the whole panel to respond. Okay, great. We're seeing more hands right there. Also, can we just group them, and then we'll do this. We'll do three at once. Thanks.
Hi, Ida Manton. I'm teaching international negotiations, and I worked with different peace processes in the Balkans mainly, analyzed and researched. So my question is, we have had institutional responses to peace building and including women, and I worked in the OSCE, for instance. There were tons of conferences. The Swedish chairpersonship focused on women, and there were offices, like in NATO, there were special representatives built. And we don't seem to be going as fast as we should, having that institutional approach. Now, I'm curious from the Ukrainian perspective, do we have involvement enough of women experts around the world, like we heard here? There are people who have been doing this kind of work that can help as experts in having the not just women voice heard, but also to add this important gender component, especially in times when we have very misogynist administration in the US, and that aspect really needs to be raised on another level. Can we step up?
Thank you very much. In a moment, I know there was a hand here, and we'll come to some others in a moment, but I'd like us to respond first. Iryna, please start us off.
Okay, from what I have to start, Eisenhower once said that there is no such a thing as a simple answer to a complex problem. And we are trying, I agree with the statement, absolutely, about gender component during reconstruction process and recovery process in Ukraine. We are going to discuss this a little bit during Ukraine Recovery Conference in Rome in July. But what I see right now in official communication, I see the wall in this direction, because some of organization and our partners think that it doesn't matter. But I'm trying to tell all the time that inclusion and equality everywhere in reconstruction, in security and defense policy, it's It's not about quotas, it's about better decisions. As well as peace is not about silence, it's also about decisions. So we have to fix it in our policies and to implement at national level. About women who can be experts at international level from Ukrainian side and how we can share this experience. You know that in Ukraine, after full-scale invasion, I just want to tell you this real case as an answer for real response. After full-scale invasion, I recognized that women defenders who already were serving in the army and civilian women who join the army on volunteer basis, they don't have even basics, like female uniforms that fits. So men's gear that they have to use during active combat
which makes them less safe?
Influence in negative way and to efficiency to everybody as a combat unit. And together with my team, we developed and implemented and tested a special female combat uniform, boots, even underwear, because can you imagine that women came to army, signed a contract, mobilized on volunteer basis, and they give them men's underwear, like boxers, you know, and told them, you need to use it. If you don't want to use, just you can give to somebody or put in your bag. So we were trying to change the system, and I know that the same situation is in majority NATO member countries, in their armies, the same situation.
Yeah.
We already implemented, and it's a very practical case that I believe will be implemented in next decades, or maybe even faster than decades, in other countries.
It's another example of Ukraine leading on innovation in ways that we wouldn't expect, right?
Yeah, but it's not innovation, to be honest. It's a necessity. I don't know. It's obvious to use men's underwear when I need to take participation in a counter-offensive operation in Donbass area, just imagine, or in trousers that for 2 or 3 sizes bigger than me.
I really applaud what you're doing there. It's making a difference. It seems so obvious, but it's not for everybody. And I like what you said, that peace is a decision, right? So peace is not the absence of war, it takes work, right? I think that also there were other responses to some of the questions. Comfort, did you want to pick up?
Well, no, I think it's worth picking up what the retired major said, that, you know, that she was the right person. The word being the right person, the phrase being the right person as well. You don't want to be judged or be a quota for the sake of being a quota. You want to be at the table because you are the right person. I mean, I understand that there is the dilemma of making sure that
who decides who the right person is. That's my
and also I do think we need to look at our recruitment panel, an interview panel. I also don't want to be judged differently and held to a different standard, whether it's higher or lower, as well. But it goes back to having the right mindset and the education and the training, which is what the Women, Peace and Security agenda has tried to do, you know, whether it's done it well. And you have an interesting question here on your silo. You have 4 women having to make a case for why they should be at the table. That already is a problem. Yeah. You know, so, yeah.
Iryna, did you want to say more about that?
I understand your point, Comfort. You say I don't want to be there or judged because I'm a woman, but because I'm a competent person. And I perfectly agree with you. And I think that's the point. But unfortunately, the way in the world in which we live and who takes decision on who has to sit where is driven by men. And we know that in the majority of the cases, those men will turn towards their male friends or colleagues, intentionally or not, but because they sit in this famous chess club or, you know, or play golf, and it's the absence of us on those places that maybe leads to the decision. So who takes this? Now, looking at having men championing, you know, in the past there was this campaign, he for she, which I think it worked at that time. Now, I personally prefer to look at this from a different perspective, because I see some of a patronizing attitude in the he for she, where I'm there to help you to do this because I have the power to do this. Even so, it was a good intention. Now I think that we have to look from the perspective that we need to have the right mindset, the right competencies. So I prefer to look into the perspective of gender-responsive leadership and accountability. We collectively want, as a leaders, take the right decision to create a space for the right and best people to sit where it's necessary. So we have to work, and we are working at NATO, but also other organizations, on this training and changing culture to make sure that all senior leaders have the right mindset and understand what being gender-responsive leader and being accountable for your decision means. So that's, I think, it's a way to do it collectively with the right people and the best competencies, but it's a long way to go.
Yeah. Heather, did you want
to? Three great questions. Thank you so much. Just very briefly on Ukraine reconstruction. Again, that at the community level, you need the community leaders for anti-transparency. You need the engineers. You need the land development planning. That screams for a whole of society approach, and done right, again, Ukraine can show us how to do reconstruction in a very different way, but it's bringing everybody at the table. The champions for women, thank you for that. My mentor just passed away a month ago, and he was my champion, and he put me into positions that I didn't even know I was right for, but he's like, I know you're right for that. So I've had that in my professional life as well. And absolutely, people need to see, and we need to foster those champions and mentoring those champions, absolutely for sure. The institutional approach, this is where I think we should take some self-criticism a little bit, that the institutional approach, it's moving too slowly. It's very needed, but as you've heard me, I just think we have to reach deeper and farther than where we are, and to help lift up and find those male champions and female champions for women to have. Let's bring the best expertise we have at this table. That is going to have women at that table. We need to make sure that, again, best and brightest on the topic. And just to say, I think in NATO, I would love to see women in resilience, because the resilience agenda, again, I think women are natural leaders for that, and how NATO and other military forces can bring women leaders at the community level into the resilience agenda, I think it will be transformative, and they'll see the connectivity between the multilateral and their daily lives, which is where we're missing.
Great. I see several hands. There have been two in the front row. If we can come here first, please. Thank you very much. Right there.
I have a question for Iryna, because I'm from Ukraine and my mother joined the army forces like 1 week ago. Wow. So she's a psychologist, and it touches me personally. So like since 2014, I was always in this movement of resistance, Maidan, ATO, and then war. And I would like to ask you if there was this change since 2014 and the full invasion of Ukraine, how the position of women changed since for 11 years, how did it change? And what are the perspectives for women in army? Are there any programs that exist for Ukrainian women who want to join army right now? And what makes it attractive?
Great. Okay, we'll come in a moment to it. I would like a group to pick questions, please.
Liljana from North Macedonia. I work on initiatives to bring more women into cybersecurity, and specifically, question would be, triggered me this uniform thing and access to the tables and everything. Basically, are we there on the tabletop on the talks and discussions in terms of this 5% in the GDP increase in defense? Are we there on the table to talk about how we get a certain number of percentage?
Can I ask you to just clarify, when you say are we, meaning women or?
Yeah. Women,
okay.
Yes. Yeah. Like, are there any initiatives or policy discussions to ensure certain percentage to be dedicated to participation of women in this 5%?
Thank you very much. I see a hand back there. If we can just take one more and then we'll get answers to these questions.
Jamal Abdullah, Managing Director, Jusur Advisor in Dubai and visiting professor at University of Montreal in Canada. My questions actually to Madame Iro. I would like to hear from you, as I'm interested actually to hear your message to the whole world leaders regarding the killed women, civilian Palestinian killed women who killed every day, single day, since more than 20 months. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, three deep questions. Iryna, the first one was about Ukraine. If I can ask you to address that, plus if you'd like to the others, and then we'll move to the responses.
I would say that for the last 11 years, situation in our army changed significantly, because before 2018, when we have ATO period, Ukrainian women joined the army, but they could not hold combat positions. So we had, in fact, combat medics, women who were snipers, gunners, sappers at the front line. But according to their documents, they were office managers, cookers, secretaries, lawyers, etc. And only in 2018, Ukrainian parliament adopted special law and give the opportunity to hold all combat position on equal ground for men and women. And of course, we continue to improve our legislation. Next plenary session, it will be next week, we will vote for special law on sexual harassment in defense and security sector. And from my side, of course, I'm trying to implement different projects to support women defenders and women veterans as well, to help them integrate back to civil society and to be an active participant of all social, economic, political area in Ukraine and develop themselves and higher ranks on equal ground with the men if they are active servant.
Okay, thank you. Actually, on the second question on are women at the table, Iryna, I'm looking at you. Do you feel you can answer that question?
So about having women at the table, you know, that's not a choice. Who sits at the table? I mean, there are less women in defense if you look at the ambassador, but that's a discussion that it's taken at the highest level. You know, the NATO leaders will come together in 2 weeks, and the conversation is doing that. So we have very few women talking about this because we have very few women in those positions of president, head of states and governments. About the fact if we do what is the gender budgeting, what you mentioned, that if you think that it's not only how much we will spend, but how we will spend, we are not there yet. We are still, I mean, our leaders are still discussing on the agreement that will have to be taken. You all know, we all know because it's on the news, what is the number is about the 5%. That's what is the target that it's hoped to be reached, that reflects the current needs, security needs. From my perspective, this is my work, try to advocate to do how we do things differently, and that's where the challenge comes. So now, step by step, we will wait for the decision of leaders at the summit in The Hague, and then we will move forward from then.
Okay, Comfort, I'm going to ask you to address the third question.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. I mean, I think let me just step back before getting to your point. The worst humanitarian crisis today is in Sudan. And it's the conflict that has least attention to it. The world's biggest refugee camp is in Cox's Bazar to deal with the Rohingya crisis
Bangladesh.
in Myanmar.
Myanmar.
It's on the border of Bangladesh and Myanmar. I just came back from there. We've lost count on Gaza, 50,000 women, children, men, young boys, babies. And then you have a number of hostages still not released from the Israeli side. Some of them are dead as well. So I think the other thing that worries me mostly as an organization that does with conflict prevention and trying to de-escalate, de-conflict as well, is the capacity of our leaders to be able to deal with equal urgency with all the crises that affect us as well. And no discrimination in terms of attention, in terms of urgency, in terms of understanding, in terms of drive to find a solution to those crises as well. This is the most dangerous time that we are living in since the end of the Second World War, since the genocide in Rwanda. We are seeing wars rising. We are seeing the return of mass-scale violations, war crimes. Every continent that we work in, whether it's from Latin America, you've got gang violence in Haiti. Whether it's in Africa, you've got the Sahel crisis, you've got Great Lakes crisis, resource minerals, civilians, innocent civilians caught in this crisis. I mean, you mentioned the Palestine issue, and then we can go into the entrenched conflict in Myanmar, where there's just indiscriminate use of weaponry against the most innocent of civilians as well. There isn't anywhere in the world that is untouched by crisis and by untold violence against citizens. Our leaders have to do better in paying equal attention to all crises, and we've all woken up to the most worrying of crises, where we've seen an attack, another attack in the Middle East as well. So your question is a reminder of the global scale of the challenges before us in an era where we all said never again. We said never again after Rwanda. We said never again after Darfur. We keep saying never again, and we're sitting here listening to the story that you've given. We have the most clearest information out there. The question is the ability to close the gap between the early warning and the early action, and finding the right policy prescription and, quite frankly, the political will to address those issues. This is the crisis of our time.
It's quite a call to
regardless
action.
of anything else. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Comfort. Our time is, we're almost up. Thank you. I'm going to ask each of the panelists for one short answer. You only have time for a very, very short answer, but there's a NATO summit coming up in 10 days. World leaders are going to be gathering there, making big decisions. If you could ask one thing of them, one bold request of what they might do to make it a somewhat more peaceful world, what would that be? Heather, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Well, what a big question. I'll keep on with Comfort's view. Our leaders have to find political courage, and they are looking for cover everywhere they can find cover. And whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the global challenges we face, there must be courage and there must be conviction. And they must bring their citizens along with that rather than politicizing it. So that's what my hope is, a lot of political courage in 2 weeks.
Courage for action, not just talk.
Correct.
Iryna, I know it's tough for you, huh?
That's tough for me, but building on what Heather said, it's, the courage implies also to keep talking about topics such as the women, peace and security, which is connected with the population, which is connected with the community, in a moment where the interest is somewhere else. And this brings me back to my first point. It's not a silos. It's not because right now we focus on defense spending, ramping up our production on Ukraine, so deterrence and defense, that we can put this on a side, because this is the core. I mean, if we are here to protect 1 billion of the population, who is this population? It's made by individuals with different identities. So speaking about the agenda, you don't need to speak about the agenda. You need to think in a strategic way. Look into the interests and the needs of this population we are there to protect. So for me, it's having the courage and the capacity, and for those who have the power to do so, to think in a different way and realize that it's not a nice thing to have, but it's an enabler to increase our strategic and operational effectiveness.
Call for some different thinking. Okay, Iryna.
It's a question.
Yeah,
I need to ask questions?
No, I want you to make a request to the NATO leaders.
Keep support Ukraine, because right now we hold the line, all Ukrainians, but we don't know how long it can be. And have a courage to let Ukraine join the NATO family.
Thank you. Comfort, the last request to NATO.
Prevention, prevention, prevention. You can increase your defense spending, but if it doesn't lead to deconfliction and de-escalation, it's for nothing. So that's got to be the message. You've got to find an end to these conflicts.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our panelists.